No new reports of COVID-19 infections in the city. A Kowloon City hotel to be used by air passengers waiting for their saliva test results. And a homemade bomb mailed to the police headquarters.
Hello and a very good evening. No new coronavirus infections were reported locally today, as the city's total case count remains at 1,025. Still, new containment measures are being rolled out.
Starting on Wednesday, air passengers arriving in Hong Kong who need to wait overnight for their deep throat saliva test results will be put up in a hotel in Kowloon City. Kana Chu reports.
It was a hectic few hours for guests at a Regal Oriental Hotel this morning. Forced to vacate, some scrambled to load personal belongings onto a moving van. This after the government requisitioned the hotel in Kowloon City for use by air passengers arriving in Hong Kong while they wait for their deep throat saliva test results. The arrangement applies to travelers touching down in the city in the afternoon and at night. Those arriving in the morning will continue to be tested at Asia World Expo. This hotel guest with a booking for the next 4 months was greeted with a surprise this morning when her room key stopped working. Learning about her eviction later on, she was not pleased with the abrupt arrangement. Echoing the sentiment was this man who told reporters he had no idea about the plan until he approached a hotel staff member. The affected guests were given alternative accommodation in Tsim Sha Tsui or Sha Tin. Those refusing to take the offer were given the refund option. Moving forward, all arrivals at the airport will also receive an additional bottle for a second deep throat saliva test to be conducted before completing their home quarantine. They are required to return their specimen on the 12th day of their isolation period. They may call their quarantine a wrap should test results return negative. The new practice comes as some recent cases of infection have emerged during or after the quarantine period. Kana Chu, TVB News.
Turning overseas now, and signs that the White House is growing impatient with US governors who continue to insist that state lockdown orders remain in place. But state leaders, including officials in New York, remain worried of a second wave of infections if lockdowns are lifted too soon. The coronavirus pandemic is beginning to take a nasty political turn. While health authorities remain anxious to keep lockdown policies in place for now, many citizens and politicians are growing restless and want an end to the shutdowns. In the United States, pressure is mounting from Trump supporters, some of whom are holding rallies in defiance of orders to stay home. And the president appears to support these protests, judging by some of his tweets. Additionally, the Trump administration is starting to argue that parts of America are ready to begin a return to normal life. Yet, some state and city leaders say getting back to normal has been hindered by a woefully inadequate White House response to the pandemic.
If the president remains silent and the money to relieve America's cities and states doesn't come, he is guaranteeing that there will not be a recovery. It's as simple as that. You can't have a recovery if your state and local governments aren't functioning.
Local leaders have for weeks urged the White House to increase private industry's production of medical supplies to help doctors and nurses who are desperately short of equipment and gear. President Donald Trump announced his administration would use federal powers to increase the manufacturing of swabs to test for the coronavirus.
We're close to finalizing a second partnership through which a U.S. manufacturer would convert its existing plant to produce over 10 million additional swabs per month. And we should be ready to announce this in a very short period of time. We also are going to be using, and we're preparing to use, the Defense Production Act to increase swab production in one U.S. facility by over 20 million additional swabs per month.
Meanwhile, officials in the worst-hit region of New York say despite a fall in the number of infections there, reopening the economy too soon could allow a second wave of infections to occur.
We showed that we can control the beast, and when you close down, you can actually slow that infection rate, but it's only halftime. We still have to make sure that we keep that beast under control.
In the UK, there are calls still to increase the amount of protective gear provided to healthcare workers fighting COVID-19. This comes as the National Health Service investigates if the blood of coronavirus survivors can be used to speed up the recovery of infected patients. Peter Caveas tells us more.
The UK reported almost 600 new COVID-19 cases Saturday, the smallest increase in almost 2 weeks. Those large numbers showcase that frontline healthcare workers are overburdened. Some say they have not been provided with enough personal protective equipment or PPE. One doctor highlighted their plight by staging a protest outside Downing Street.
I'm here today for all the doctors, nurses and healthcare workers who lost their lives tragically and senselessly to COVID. And despite being told we have enough protection, lives are still being lost. Vulnerable members of staff are losing their lives and they're not being taken care of, and we know that because they're dying.
The country is also preparing to collect the blood from COVID-19 survivors. That's to investigate if convalescent plasma transfusions could improve an infected patient's speed of recovery and chances of survival. The recovery of one patient, Simon Chung, was applauded. Cheers were heard at the NHS Nightingale Hospital in London, as the 58-year-old was the first patient to be discharged after he recovered from the new coronavirus. The emergency facility was built in only 9 days to boost COVID-19 treatment capacity in London. Italy recorded another drop in deaths, 433, about 50 fewer than the previous day. But new cases are still emerging. The small town of Capagnano, near Rome, has been declared a red zone and is under a total lockdown until the beginning of May. The measure was taken after 105 patients and almost half of the 61 staff members of the Santa Maria del Prato Rehabilitation Center tested positive. French Prime Minister Edouard Philippe indicated masks will likely be required on French public transport as the country begins to lift its lockdown next month. Spain registered another sharp fall in new deaths with 399, the lowest in the past 4 weeks. Spanish authorities said such a trend brings hope, but caution is still needed. Roughly 20,000 people have died in the country because of COVID-19. Peter Caveas, TVB News.
Meanwhile, India has eased some restrictions imposed as part of a nationwide lockdown, allowing some manufacturing and agricultural activity to resume amid the pandemic. Here's Peter Caveas again.
India reported its biggest single-day spike in coronavirus cases. Some 15,000 infections were recorded over 24 hours, raising the national total past 17,000. More than 15% of the cases come from Mumbai's slums, where many people ignore lockdown orders. Elsewhere in Asia, South Korean authorities extended their social distancing policy for another 16 days, but relaxed some rules amid a continued downward trend of cases. Meanwhile, a former North Korean doctor who defected to the South almost a decade ago is questioning Pyongyang's claim to have zero infections. Choi Jong-hoon was in North Korea during the SARS outbreak and flu pandemic. He says year after year infectious diseases repeatedly occur, but Pyongyang says there isn't any outbreak. And Turkey has overtaken China as the Asian country with the most cases of COVID-19. Turkey recorded its first infection on March 10th. Now there are more than 86,000 cases, with more than 2,000 fatalities. Peter Caveas, TVB News.
Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro was greeted by hundreds of supporters outside the army headquarters in Brasilia. His appearance at the event on the National Army's Day runs counter to the measures of the World Health Organization and his own health ministry aimed at reducing the spread of coronavirus. They include social distancing and avoiding crowds. Security guards formed a line to stop the crowd from getting closer to the president. Bolsonaro has been skeptical of COVID-19, which he has referred to as a little flu. Last week, he fired his health minister over disagreements on how to handle the outbreak.
Police headquarters received a homemade bomb addressed to Police Chief Chris Tang. No one was hurt and an investigation is underway. Dong Yao Nye has more.
A suspicious package was delivered to police headquarters in Wan Chai at around 10:20 a.m. The item, addressed to Police Commissioner Chris Tang, gave off a strong smell upon its arrival. Bomb disposal officers were called to the scene. An explosive device was found inside the package.
I confirmed that the item was an improvised explosive device, a homemade bomb, which had partially functioned. This device was what we call victim-operated. It was designed to function by whoever opened the parcel. They would be the victim.
The bomb has now been sent for further tests. No one was injured in the incident. Officers say this kind of bomb is commonly used by terrorists worldwide.
And sadly today, this is yet another indication that in Hong Kong we are still dealing with homegrown terrorism.
This is the latest suspicious package police have received this month. In early April, 2 letters with unknown white powder inside were sent to police headquarters and the police sports and recreation club respectively. One letter came with a threatening message. Police say they won't rule out a link between the cases and strongly condemned today's incident as an extremely irresponsible action. We will try every means to investigate the case and even make arrests, said Senior Superintendent Ng Wing-Ti. The chemicals used to make the explosive device are being analyzed by authorities. Dong Yao-Nie, TVB News.
Still ahead, a shooting incident in Canada leaves at least 16 dead. The local unemployment rate hits a 9-year high. And a local face mask scam involving $57 million since the outbreak of COVID-19.
And a warm welcome back to TVB News. A gunman disguised as a police officer killed at least 16 people and set fire to homes during a 12-hour rampage in the Canadian province of Nova Scotia.
As Alan Buckner reports, it was the deadliest attack of its kind in Canada's history.
The attack ended in the town of Enfield, where police announced they had arrested 51-year-old Gabriel Wertman. They later said he died, but gave no further details. The rampage began in the town of Portapique, where several bodies were found inside and outside one home. Several more bodies were found at other locations. Police believe the shooter may have targeted his first victims, but then began to act randomly. They said he was dressed up as a police officer and was driving what looked like a police car. They advised people, already on stay-at-home orders because of the coronavirus, to lock their doors and stay in their basements after several homes were set on fire as well. The gunman was finally cornered at a gas station in Enfield.
The fellow got out of the passenger side and he just right out in front of the car and out with his gun and just opened up right through the windshield of the car.
I hear the shots and I look out and there's a guy running back and forth up beside the what looks to be a police vehicle.
Nova Scotia is on lockdown orders, or it's likely more people could have been killed.
That big stop is always full of seniors in the morning for breakfast. Like, that place is full every day. So being a Sunday, that he could have done a lot of damage. So I'm glad that the restaurant was closed.
Among the victims was Heidi Stevenson, a 23-year veteran of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police with 2 children. Mass shootings are rare in Canada, which has much tighter gun laws than the United States. The death toll from Sunday's shooting exceeded that of a Montreal massacre in 1989, when a gunman killed 15 women. Alan Buckner, TVB News.
Locally, pan-Democrats are calling on Hong Kong people to fight against a constitutional crisis never seen in the city before.
It says the government repeatedly flip-flops over the exact role of Beijing's liaison office. Vicky Wong has the story.
Once upon a time, the liaison office was the Hong Kong branch of the Xinhua News Agency. In 2000, the State Council officially renamed it as the Liaison Office of the Central People's Government in the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. Pan-Democrats are accusing mainland authorities of twisting the Basic Law to grant the office more power in Hong Kong.
This is the turning point because this is the first time that the central government blatantly distort the Basic Law, the Article 22, by saying that they can not only intervene, but that they have a supervisory power. It clearly violates and destructs the whole spirit of one country, two systems. The crux of one country, two systems is to separate the governance of Hong Kong and mainland, and that except for foreign affairs and military affairs. That's very clear.
In the State Council's letter in January 2000, it spells out the liaison office duties. It says the office and its personnel are to strictly abide by the Basic Law and local laws. A senior official had this to say about the role of the office during a LegCo meeting back in 2018.
We believe that the LCBG will always follow the laws of the SAR in accordance with the requirements stipulated in BL22.
Today, the Bar Association slammed the government for its hesitation and confusion over the status of the liaison office under Article 22 of the Basic Law. It also said in any event there is no provision in the Basic Law which confers on the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office and Liaison Office the power of supervision over affairs which Hong Kong SAR administers on its own. A pro-Beijing heavyweight thinks otherwise.
The setting up of the Central Liaison's Office has got nothing to do with Article 22, so the fact that they abide by Hong Kong law is not by virtue of Section 22, rather by virtue of the fact that there was a decision by the States Council when the Central Liaison Office was set up that it must abide by the Basic Law and the Hong Kong law. This case is clearly not a matter of high degree of autonomy because the national anthem law has to be passed in LegCo that is in compliance with the decision of the Standing Committee.
But Pan-Democrats continued their criticism of the government for failing to set the record straight on the issue.
There is no determination, and our government can't fight against and can't stand firm on their position. Our government is not stand with Hong Kong people and not even stand with their own stance. And this is ridiculous.
Pinky Wong, TVB News.
Well, Hong Kong's latest unemployment figures for the first quarter this year soared to a 9-year high of 4.2%. Academics are also warning fresh graduates of tough times ahead in the job market. Here's Jackie Lim.
The dismal economic reality continues to hit home. The latest unemployment figure between January and March surged past the 4% mark, hitting a record 9-year high. More than 162,000 jobless claims were filed, and the number has been on the rise for 6 consecutive months. The pandemic's economic toll is also reflected in the underemployment figures, which climbed to a decade-high 2.1%. Among the hardest hit industries is the food and beverage sector, with its jobless rate standing at 8.6%. Following closely is the construction sector, and the tourism and retail-related industries, which had a combined rate of nearly 7%, numbers not seen since the global financial crisis in 2009. To halt the hemorrhaging of jobs among struggling businesses, the administration has rolled out 2 rounds of bailout packages. Academics say the current unemployment figures have not captured the full effect of COVID-19. Expecting the rate to peak in June at 5 to 6%, a researcher said this year's fresh graduates may need to lower their expectations.
Now, with COVID-19, I think they can't bargain for good salary. They have to wait until the economy rebounds. So they better decide whether they should continue to study for a master's degree to better equip themselves. They should plan for other alternatives.
Lee encourages fresh grads to learn from these trying circumstances.
The worst time, I think, is current time. Successful or not, this is still a very good experience. A job searching process experience.
Jackie Lin, TVB News.
Police say thousands of people have lost almost $57 million in face mask scams since the COVID-19 epidemic broke out. In their latest crackdown on scammers, the police have arrested 31 suspects aged between 16 and 61. They allegedly cheated more than 400 people out of around $3 million. In many cases, victims ordered and paid for surgical masks online, but never received the products. The police say many of the websites and social media accounts involved in the cases were established recently. Authorities urged people to do some research on merchants before making any purchases.
And that is our main news for Monday nights.
Thanks for watching.
Bye for now.